Good morning, everyone. My name is Regie Samuel, and I'm a Technical Information Specialist in the Drug Registration and Listing Branch. Today, it's my privilege to be able to give you a demo in CDER Direct on how to submit an establishment registration. A few learning objectives to keep in mind for today is we'll learn how to determine who registers and when, describe the various document types associated with establishment registration, and then to get into the meat of it, we'll create and submit an establishment registration, a registration renewal, and a deregistration. The next few slides regarding who must register and when will be gone through more detail in Tasneem's presentation in just a couple of sessions. But I just want to mention here at a very high level, who must register is any establishment that manufactures, repackages, and relabels drugs for distribution in the United States. There are certain exemptions that are included under 21 CFR 207.13, and Yogesh will be covering some of those exemptions in his presentation. When to register, again at a high level, it's domestic establishments should register no later than 5 calendar days after they begin their manufacturing process of the human drug product. And those that are foreign establishment should register prior to their importation of the drug product into the United States. When to renew and update, Tasneem will go into much more detail, but registration renewal should be submitted between October 1 and December 31 in order for that establishment or establishments to be current through the following calendar year. But if there are certain updates that have to be provided, such as an updated name or address, or your facility closes down, those updates should be provided within 30 days of the change. You don't have to wait until October 1 and December 31 to submit any changes to your establishment registration. Even if that's something like an updated business operation at your facility, that can be submitted at any time during the year. So what are the establishment registration document types? Well, there are 4 document types associated with establishment registration. The first is establishment registration, and that's the document type you would use when you initially register your establishment or establishments, and it's the one you would use if there are updates to your establishment registration you want to submit to the FDA. The second is a no change notification, and just as the name kind of indicates, this document type is to basically say to the FDA, hey, nothing that has changed from none of the information has changed from what I submitted in my prior establishment registration. And it's kind of a simplified SPL document that you can submit. Now, you can also just choose to submit a new version of an establishment registration that has no changes in it as well. Both are acceptable. The third document type is an establishment deregistration. This is a document type that's used if your establishment is no longer, or all the establishments in your SPL document are no longer doing a manufacturing process on human drug product. The fourth is kind of a version of that deregistration. The out of business notification is simply a way of saying that all the establishments in my establishment registration are out of business. It's not just that we're no longer handling human drug product, we're completely out of business. So that's what that document type indicates. So let's get into what we've all been waiting for, which is the actual demo in CDER Direct to be able to submit this establishment registration information. Here's the login page, and we're not going to go through the login process. We're going to go jump right into the demo in CDER Direct for establishment registration. All right, now that we've logged into our CDER Direct account, we'll now be brought to our landing page. If this is the first time you've logged into your CDER Direct account after creating it, you won't have any submissions here. For the sake of time, I've made some sample submissions for us to be able to look at instead of you watching me type all the information in. So that's why I have submissions that appear here. You won't. And the other thing to keep in mind is even if your firm has been registered as an establishment, previously through some other means, maybe through the ESG or someone, a U.S. agent's CDER Direct account, the only submissions that will appear within your CDER Direct account is the ones that were created within your CDER Direct account. It won't simply populate submissions submitted through a different portal. So please keep that in mind. We get that question quite a bit. I had registered in 2020. How come I don't see that submission here? Well, that's because it wasn't created within this particular CDER Direct account. So let's just keep that in mind. But let's go back to what we're talking about before, and that's registering our establishment for the first time. And to do that, we're going to click on Establishment Registration. Then we're going to click on Create New/Upload File, then create a new registration using a blank form and continue. And we're going to get this screen, which is our Establishment Registration SPL. The first field we're going to have to fill in is to tell the system what is the document type of this establishment registration. For any updates or for a new registration, you're going to select Establishment Registration. The next 4 fields will be filled in for you, so you don't have to enter any information there. After that, we have all these boxes we need to fill in now. Any field name that has a dotted underline beneath it in CDER Direct contains, if you click on it, will provide to you help text. And that help text basically tells you a little more information about that particular field and the information we're seeking for you to enter. So if I clicked on registrant name, I get some help text here. If I clicked on registrant DUNS, it'll tell me the kind of DUNS number, how I should enter it without hyphens for this particular registrant. For the sake of time, I've already filled in an establishment registration. So close your eyes for just a brief moment, pretend I'm typing all this information in, and because I'm so fast and efficient, I've been doing this job for a long time, let's just assume that now when you open your eyes, all of the information I've somehow entered so quickly. So here in the registrant details, I need to provide the registrant information and the registrant contact information. I've entered that information detail. One thing to keep in mind here, we get this question every so often. The registrant should have a DUNS number, but the contact address for the registrant doesn't have to exactly match the address that's in the Dun & Bradstreet database for this DUNS number. And this is different compared to how we validate establishment address. So after I've provided the establishment address information, registrant contact information, and I want to enter establishment information, I'm going to go ahead and click on Add Establishment. And now I'll come to this screen that contains a few more boxes to fill in. Don't feel daunted. This is all information you'll know and be able to enter in quite quickly. I'm going to enter the establishment name for this particular establishment that I want to register and the DUNS number associated with this establishment. Then I'll select the country in which this particular establishment has, let's just put something else here, then in which this establishment has is located, and then the address and the city and the state. Now, one thing we want to make sure as we're entering in this information regarding the establishment address is that it exactly matches the record that is associated with this DUNS number. So in Dun & Bradstreet, this DUNS number would have a establishment name and establishment address associated with it. Please ensure that when you enter this information into CDER Direct, the establishment name and establishment address exactly matches what's entered, what is recorded in the DUNS record for this DUNS number. That'll help ensure that your submission doesn't experience a lot of the errors that many people find themselves experiencing when submitting establishment registration. The establishment FEI will be blank for now. This number is assigned by the FDA District Monitor, and it's assigned up to 90 days after we receive your establishment registration. However, Usually if after about 30 days, you can go, and that's after 30 days after you've successfully submitted your establishment registration. If you still haven't received an email regarding your FEI, you can go to the FEI search portal. The link is here if you click on the field name for FEI, and find out what is the FEI number associated with your particular establishment. And I'll come back to this when we talk about updating the establishment registration. Then I'll enter all the information here regarding my particular establishment, the contact information. If it's the same as my registrant contact information, you got this cool little box over here that I can click, and it makes life a little easier for me by bringing over the information that I had entered for my contact, so I don't need to retype it. So here it is, that information. And then finally, I need to provide a business operation for this establishment. And in this case, this firm location is manufacturing human OTC drug products produced under a monograph and human prescription drug products. I can click save, which simply takes me back to this screen, say I'm done. But let's say I had multiple business operations. I could click save and then click add business operation again, then select what business operation I want, click save again. But a little shortcut for you to know is, let's say I'm at this place where I'm first selecting my business operation and I have multiple business operations to select. I can click the qualifier associated with my business operation, and then I can click on save and add. So I don't need to, it saves me an extra click. So now I can go here and put the other business operation that I perform here, which is a relabeling. Say what I am relabeling. Another thing I should point out, even when you click relabel, some firms get confused because it still says manufactures human OTC or human prescription drug product. Hey, even if I select pack, it still says manufacturer, but I'm not manufacturing, I'm only packing it. According to the FDA, when we talk about packing and repacking or labeling and relabeling, those are considered manufacturing activities. That's why the qualifiers say manufacture. So just keep that in mind. That being said, if your firm is solely a private label distributor, that is not what label means. Here, label is referring to firms that are physically affixing labeling to a drug product. If your firm is solely a private label distributor, in other words, your firm has another contract manufacturer who's manufacturing and packaging the product, and all that happens is that manufacturer is also putting your firm's name and label on it, under which the drug product is being distributed, that would make your firm a private label distributor. My private label distributor business is not involved in the manufacturing process. In that case, I should not register my location, my private label distributor location, as a establishment. And that's one thing to keep in mind when it comes to establishment registration. This word here, label, is referring to physically affixing labels to drug products. It's not referring to private label distributors. So now that I've picked the particular business operations that I want, that I'm doing at this location, I can save them, and then I'll click on Save Establishment. Now, click on Save Establishment here. Now, for the sake of time, I've created other establishments within this establishment registration. And you'll be wondering, how can you do that? Don't you need to submit multiple separate establishment registrations for each establishment location? And the answer to that question is no. You can submit, you can register multiple establishments within one establishment registration if they are all fall within your ownership. So if I have 5 facilities in the world or 3 facilities around the world, I don't need to submit 3 different establishment registrations. I can create one establishment registration and simply add multiple establishments to that particular registration. In this case, I did. So here I have another one that's located in India. And I had entered this information, again, for the sake of time, pretend I just clicked on add establishment instead of edit. And I have this particular establishment located in Chennai, India, and I've provided information. what ends up happening if I do select an establishment address with the country that is outside the United States? CDER Direct will then pull up two other sections that don't appear if the establishment country is United States. So if it's outside of the United States, you're going to get these two other boxes that ask for U.S. agent and importer information. Now, the U.S. agent information is what I would enter here. But my company has a location in the United States and overseas. As such, I can enter my U.S. location as the U.S. agent for this foreign establishment that I have. I don't need to hire another U.S. agent if I'm choosing to handle all of the information regarding my foreign establishments myself. So here I put in the information of the U.S. agent, which in this case is the same company with the U.S. location. Your agent has to have a DUNS number. Make sure that's there. And then I can also add the importer information. Who are the folks that will be importing my particular product in the United States? And you can have multiple importers, similar to business operation. If you click on Add Importer, you can enter information for a particular importer. Click on Save and Add, and continue to add. If you had 6, 7, 8 different importers, you can include them all here. Once you're done, you'll click on Save Establishment. Now I'm ready to submit my SPL, but I have all these other buttons to press, Reg. What do they mean? Well, let's go through them one by one from right to left. Return would basically say, hey, I want to exit out of this. And if I click on that, it'll say, are you sure you want to do this? Because if you do, you won't be saving the information you entered. You're like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Click Cancel. Delete is exactly what it looks like. It's going to delete all this information. You won't be able to go back to it at all. Save and validate. Now, let's stop and consider this one. Save and validate will save what I'm doing, and in the process, submit. I shouldn't use that word. And in the process, send this particular submission for the automated validation. This is different than it being received by the FDA. What this does is it kind of goes through a quicker process to see if I've made any errors in my submission. And if I have, it'll come back and let me know within a few minutes, hey, you have an error in that your DUNS address doesn't match the record and doesn't match the DUNS record. Please update your address. Or if it does pass validation, it'll say, hey, your submission is ready to now submit. So keep that in mind. This doesn't actually send it to the FDA. It's just to validate the SPL. Then you have Save as Draft. This is the one you would select if in the middle of trying to fill out all of the information, your dog starts barking and he's just incessant that he must go outside. And so you have to stop what you're doing. You don't want to lose your work. You can click on Save as Draft. It'll save it in your CDER Direct account. You can close out of the browser. When you come back and log into your CDER Direct account, you can pick up where you left off. What we want to do in this case is click on Submit SPL. Submit SPL will send it through the validation process and also submit it to the FDA if it passes validation. And so that's the one I want to select. If I click on Submit SPL, it'll now give me the status of awaiting acceptance. Awaiting acceptance. And then the other, what I want, hopefully it will do, and it'll take about maybe 10 minutes or so to go through the validation process, the complete validation process. And once it's completed, hopefully I'll get back this status that says submission accepted. If it does, that means now that the submission has been received by the FDA and the establishments listed in my establishment registration are registered. Okay, so I've shifted to this other screen to help us see what to do when after we've submitted our establishment registration and it's now been accepted, and how do I now re-register in the following year, or if I need to make updates to my registration at any time during the year, how do I make those updates to my establishment registration? Well, it's quite simple. Once you've logged back into your CDER Direct account and you have that submission, you've identified the submission you want to update, that has the status of submission accepted. You'll just click on submission accepted. And then what you're going to do to be able to edit this particular establishment registration, whether that's to submit an update because the contact has changed, a business operation has changed, or you're re-registering, or you want to deregister. In any of those cases, you're going to access the file that you want to update, click on submission accepted, then click on create new version. Clicking on create new version allows the form to now be updated. And that's what we want to be able to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on create new version. So now you can see I've kind of unlocked the SPL. What ends up happening is the system automatically increases the version number by 1. And then now I can update the information that I would like to update. That could be that, hey, this person's no longer the contact for the registrant. I can go here and I can edit this person and put in the new contact information, the new email address, etc. I can also, let's say I have a new establishment that I have brought online in a different part of the world. I can at this point click on add establishment, add that new establishment that's under my ownership, and then submit the SPL to register that particular establishment. So now I would have 4 listed establishments in this establishment registration. And then the other thing I can do, so that's how we update information. Now, if I want to re-register again between October 1st and December 31st, same process, access that previously accepted SPL file, click on create new version. If there's nothing to change, you just kind of look, make sure everything is good and correct. I always suggest this to firms so you don't miss out on any correspondence from our office. Make sure the email addresses are correct, the phone numbers are correct, and then just click submit SPL and you're done. It would literally take you about 2 clicks once you're logged into CDER Direct to re-register your establishment. Submission accepted, create new version, submit SPL. I guess that's 3 clicks. And you would be done in that case. The other thing to know that I want to show you is how to deregister an establishment here. And there are 2 ways. One is I could change the document type to establishment deregistration. Now, if I do that, what that means is all of these establishments that I have in this particular SPL would be deregistered. Now, if that's what you want to do and you're deregistering all of the establishments listed in this registration, that's perfectly fine. You click on establishment registration and then change the document type to deregistered. But if click it and then submit SPL. But let's say I just want to deregister one less than all of the establishments in my establishment registration. What I would do in that case, let's say I have this particular establishment that I need to deregister. I don't want to click on changing the document type to deregistration because that will deregister all of my establishments. If I just want to deregister one of them, I will click on the edit tool next to the establishment I want to deregister and then click on delete establishment. Deleting the establishment from the registration now leaves me with just the 2 establishments I want to continue to keep registered. But the one that I've deleted, once I submit it, our system will detect that, hey, this particular establishment registration associated with this set ID used to have 3 establishments associated with it. Now it only has 2. And we will be able to then detect and say, oh, that's the one that they chose to deregister or had gone out of business, that particular establishment. So keep that in mind of how to deregister. Sometimes firms accidentally change the document types establishment deregistration when they only wanted to delete less than all, deregister less than all of the establishments included in their registration. So if we just want to deregister 1 or 2 of the 3 that we have, we're just going to remove them from the establishment registration, keep the document type as establishment registration, and then submit SPL. Now in this last screen, I'm going to show you how to import a file, an establishment registration SPL file, into CDER Direct. So when would you use this? A case for this would be, let's say you had a consultant you would use before, or a different company had submitted for you in registering your establishment registration, but you now want to handle it on your own. And without having to re-enter all of the information manually one by one, you can get the XML file from your previous consultant or whoever it submitted for on your behalf previously and save that file to your computer. And then how do you upload it into CDER Direct? Well, what you do is you would click on Establishment Registration, click on Create New / Upload File, click on the radio button to import an existing establishment registration, and then continue. Click in the dialog box here and select the file from your computer that you want to now upload. It will be a zip file that contains the XML of the establishment registration. So I'll just double click this and then click Upload. Once I do that, the information that I had from my previous submission will be automatically uploaded into CDER Direct. It'll automatically increase the version number by 1 to the next integer, and then keep all of the previous information you submitted intact. So now it's in your CDER Direct account, but it hasn't been submitted. So what you want to do is update any contact information you need to, any business operations in the establishment, and then as you did before, you can submit to SPL, or let's say it's not time to submit, it's not October 1st and you're still properly registered and no information has changed, you can at this point just click on Save as Draft. And what that'll do is just save it. Now it's saved within your CDER Direct account for you to be able to access when the re-registration period comes up in October 1st and December 31st. All right, so now we're down towards the end here. Here's a challenge question for you to test your knowledge regarding all the things we just talked about. The question is, who should not register as a drug establishment? A firm that is solely a private label distributor, B, a manufacturer, C, a relabeler, or D, contract manufacturers. The correct answer is A, firm that is solely a private label distributor should not register itself as a drug establishment. Remember, drug establishment is one that is performing some sort of manufacturing process, which includes packing and labeling, but it's not someone who's simply distributing the product under their own name and label. Challenge question number 2. During what period can I update my establishment registration? A, January 1 to January 31, B, October 1 to December 31, C, June 1 to June 30, or D, any time of the year. When can you update your establishment registration? The correct answer is D, any time of the year. When you have an update, as soon as it happens, go ahead and submit it. Just take your 5 minutes out of the day and submit that update in your establishment registration. All right, let's summarize what we learned here today. Probably the most important point of all is to register and update your establishment registration on time. As shown in today's demonstration, it's quite easy to do once you know the buttons to click and the information required for your updates. A few simple clicks can allow you to get your registration done well in time for the registration renewal, or if any updates need to be made on your registration. Always remember that you can manage multiple establishment locations on one establishment registration. You don't need to submit a separate establishment registration for each of your establishment locations. They can be managed on one establishment registration, SPL. Always make sure that your DUNS information is up to date with Dun & Bradstreet, and that would be the establishment name and the establishment address. If there's any change in the name or address, you wouldn't submit an establishment registration first. First, go to Dun & Bradstreet, update that information in their database, and then come and submit your registration update for your establishment registration. Finally, if your firm is solely a private label distributor, you would not register as a drug establishment via establishment registration, although there are listing requirements, drug listing requirements still for the private label distributor. They would not register as a drug establishment, as that's intended for those that are performing some manufacturing activity. Here are a few links to resources that would be helpful to you. Of course, the CFR for the registration and listing, the DSER's website, which shows the current registrations in the FDA database, and of course, FDA Direct, the way that you can submit SPL documents to the FDA. Thank you for sticking with me throughout this presentation. I hope it was helpful to you, and thank you once again for submitting your establishment registrations on time.